Bingo. Check, check, do sound check. I always like sound. Anyway, this is Green Forest Work, Eric Oliver. He is the restoration coordinator for Green Forest Work, where he has been for 3 years. Eric has 37 years of experience in reforestation, and his education includes Clarion University, BS in Earth Science, Penn State University World Campus, Master's Certificate in GIS. And today his presentation is Scaling Up Mined Land Forestation in Appalachia. Please welcome Eric.
All right, thank you guys. I'm a little bit of a pacer when I talk, so I'm not going to be behind the microphone. If somebody has trouble hearing, let me know. I'll rein myself in and try to get behind it. But thank you for coming in today. We're going to talk about a couple different things. We're going to do a little bit of deep dive into what mine land reforestation is and why it's special, why just planting trees is not successful on mine lands. And we're going to look at a grant that the Green Forest Work is working under right now to kind of aid in the scaling up of this. And then we're going to take a real quick look at a very successful project that worked down in Eastern Kentucky that it works here in Pennsylvania just the same. It's just this is the one I picked for this presentation. So. Like Andy said, I'm with Green Forest Work. We are a nonprofit that is owned by the University of Kentucky. We have we predominantly go out and work all throughout Appalachia. Any place that mining has taken place. We're actually expanding out a little bit more, and we're getting into using the term drastically disturbed lands because historically it was coal mining that we worked under, and then it started working with some like quarries and stuff like that. And now we're working like places like where industrial parks go in and they really compact the soil and are having trouble getting trees grown. So we're using the term drastically disturbed land. The technique that we used was developed by the Office of Surface Mining. It's called ARI, Appalachian Regional Reforestation Initiative. And what it is a whole host of techniques that you do to make mine land reforestation successful, okay? So just a quick look here about GFW. This is where we're located. We're working everywhere from northern Alabama to the New York border of Pennsylvania in the bituminous coal fields and anthracite coal fields. And you can kind of see it's washed out here a little bit, but you can see the counties that have a little bit of color to them are counties that GFW has projects in. So you can see we've worked pretty much throughout the entire coal fields in doing this. And you can see over on the right-hand side, there was a little bit of work that we did prior to 2009. Officially, we became an official entity in 2009. We did 37 acres and 35,000 trees. And in our biggest year was in 2022 when we did 3,100, almost 3,200 acres, and we did about 1.1 million trees. So we have a total of over 7 million, 8 million trees that we have done throughout this time period that we've been in existence, and it seems to be growing. One of the things, like I talked about, we're scaling this up a little bit. We're working on a grant, which I'll get into in a little bit, but we're trying to scale this up because the funders keep asking the question is, where does this project end? Well, we have money, we're doing fundraising, we like what's going on, but where does this project end? How many acres do you have to do it? We really don't have a good metric of doing it. We have some real good guesses, but we don't have a good metric. So we're actively engaged, in different projects across Appalachia. You see that from the map. We work with private landowners. We consult with coal companies so that they can do it right the first time. We work with other government agencies like DCNR, DEP. We work with the Game Commission, with anybody that has some kind of dog in the fight with dealing with this mine land that has been left in a state of arrested succession. We plant native trees only. We're 100% native. We don't advocate for anything else. We like to go through the temperate forest, normal species that are here, which is typically hardwoods throughout Appalachia. We do a lot of conifers also for components depending on the type of area, okay? We do, soil amendments, the erosional control measures. We're into an ecological restoration of the watershed. This mining came through that most of Appalachia was forest land prior to mining happening. The mining happened. A lot of times it got put back to a shrub, to a grassland that's overtaken by invasives. There's a lot of compaction, and things just aren't going well out there. So we're trying to, give it a restart and, put the right things that are in there. A lot of times in the early 80s, mining companies were using autumn olive as their plant that they were planting as part of their reforestation, and nowadays that's on the noxious weed list. So we like to get in community involvement. We go out, we partner with all kinds of organizations, watershed groups, other nonprofits, other funders. We work with schools, universities, just any type of volunteer group. We love to bring that component in. A lot of our trees, well, like when we're talking 1.1 million trees in a year, that's a lot for volunteers to plant. So what we do, we hire professional contractors to do the bulk of the planting, but almost every project has a small faction. We'll keep 1 to 5 acres, depending on the amount of volunteers we have, that we can bring them in. We can do a public outreach education with them, and they can plant the trees and they can be part of that project. Okay. We'd like to, engage residents. We provide, we do a lot of outreach like we're doing here. We go to universities, we talk to forestry students, we talk to mining engineering students, that kind of stuff. And we just like to, talk to people about what it means to get your forest and get it back to what it needs to be. So, a lot of people want to know this, but we'll just go over it real quick. Importance of reforestation, biodiversity. Forests are about one of the most biodiverse environments that you can get out there. Okay, carbon sequestration, big buzzword that's going on right now. There's a lot of entities out there looking at this. We're doing it because it's carbon sequestration. It's good for the environment. There's people out there that want to take and make money out of this and capitalize it. More power to them. We'd like to see community engagement. We'd like to see, people come out and feel like they're being part of. A lot of times we have people come out and say, my grandfather was a miner on this coal mine, and it feels good to let us, help restore the land that was there that was left after the extraction. And we just like to see healthy forests. We've got healthier watersheds, healthier streams, healthier air, all of the impacts of having a healthy forest versus having the shrubland or grassland that was left. So talking about mining, like I said, it's kind of its special thing, because when the extraction was taking place, there was a lot of disturbance. The ground was flipped over. Prior to 1977, there wasn't laws about putting it back, and there was a lot of high walls and spoil piles and water impoundments that were left. After 77, they started putting it back, but they started putting it back very compacted. They started worrying about a lot of grass growth on it, and they put a non-native species. A lot of Scotch pine was used. You go out and you look at the typical mine site, and you see 50% black locust, 50% red pine or Scotch pine. There's no biodiversity to that. So the conditions, that was a faction of the conditions, because the soils were highly compacted. There wasn't a whole lot of topsoil, and a lot of times the soils are left in an acidic condition from these mining processes, and those aren't the best for trees to grow. So what can we do to fix that kind of stuff? We can get rid of the compaction, create a growth medium and take care of the acidity, okay? Just looking at this, one of the facts that was just kind of brought to me over the last couple of months is when you look at climate change as a whole, the temperate region of Appalachia has been moderated, and they attribute that to the forest, the temperate forest that is here, as compared to other places like New Jersey, Florida, places that don't have they have like the savanna grasslands and stuff like that. They're saying that restoring these forests is something that's out there. It's ecologically and it's climate changing. So, when we're talking, it sounds like a broken record here, but we're talking about compacted soils. That's the number one thing that we run into out there. When I go out on projects, I have a pentrometer I go with me. Usually before we start work, I push the pentrometer in the ground. I might get 3 inches into the ground and get 300 PSI. After we go out and we do these projects and we do the preparation, get the trees ready and plant the trees, that pentrometer has a 3-foot rod on it. There's times that I can bury that 3-foot rod and almost not get over 100 PSI. So it is working. We're taking that out. We're managing the invasive species. And you were talking, like I said, I just talked about the effects of climate change. It's moderated because it's proven that forests moderate climate change. Okay, and we always are learning from our projects. We're always learning something new. What, we'll have a plant that doesn't grow certain, but being we're a university, being we like to research stuff. If we have a problem, we like to go find it is, because we don't like to do that same problem over again. What went wrong? Could we change a species? Could we change a treatment? Whatever it is, we want those. We want these projects to succeed. Going to kind of jump into what we're doing with right now. We have a NIFWIF grant through the Central Appalachians Grant Program. And what it is the Central Appalachian, it's a whole wide of all through the Appalachians where NIFWIF likes to put money into projects. We were the successful awardee of getting this grant. And you can see like the things that they like to do. They support site preparations, tree procurement, the planting, and then post monitoring to make sure that they're going to be successful. Okay, and this is allowing us to expand. But this is one of the questions, and NIFWIF was one of the big pushers, that they were saying, hey, we like putting money into this, but where does it end? How much do we need to figure out? So part of this grant, when we're starting to talk about the deliverables, is we're out there and we're doing an inventory. We're gonna try to figure out, at least within a good reason, how many acres could this treatment go to? Okay, so our objectives in this grant were to restore native forests and ecosystems, improve water quality. We're going to inventory these mines. We're going to enhance our monitoring program. There's money in this to bring out interns and to do. We just finished up our first year of it, where we are monitoring for birds and bats. We're also doing herps, reptiles, and mammals. We're looking at on these sites and seeing how they develop as time goes on. We're looking at young sites, middle sites, and old sites. Now that we're 20 years into this program with ARI, we have sites that are starting to look like old growth forest again. So we're able to see how the flora and fauna has returned to it. So the deliverables of this grant, we own 120 acres. I don't have a project picked out for that, but we told them that we would find 120 acres within the context of this grant and get it reforested. We also are going to create an online map as we're doing the inventory of the sites and finding out where mining has taken place throughout Appalachia and where reforestation opportunities exist. We're going to put that out on a publicly released map that you can share to anybody that has a web browser. All they have to do is have a web address or a QR code, and they can access this and they can see the sites that are going to come up on the inventory. We'll also be able to track it, because we'll be able to show the projects where projects have been completed, where they're ongoing, where they're future, that kind of stuff. We're also, like I said, we're enhancing our monitoring data. We're able to buy more units. We're able to get out and enhance and monitor more forests and more, species of concern and stuff like that. We work a lot with the Cerulean warblers, the Golden Wing Warbler Society, ruffed grouse. We work a lot with those people, in eastern brook trout, species of concern that we want to see return through this stuff. And then we're also, a part of this grant is we're also looking at some enhanced program function. And some of that is as a program whole, because one of the things we've been losing a lot in this area is nurseries. So if we're trying to plant trees, we've got to have trees grown for us. And we're losing, the nurseries are shutting down, they're minimizing their operations, or some of the plants aren't available. So we're looking at ways that we can enhance that. We're looking at ways that we can leverage funding. But we're also taking an internal look. We actually have a third party taking an internal look at GFW to see what we need. We are a staff of 6 people. I'm one of 6 people that's doing this, but we're taking an internal look at us to see, if this is going to ramp up, the money's going to be there, the acres are there, what kind of staff do we need to be able to do this and work it effectively? So we have a long history, of course. I think the most updated number, I think we're at 1,700 projects that we've completed throughout Appalachia since 2019, or 2009, excuse me. They're really, really successful. I mean, you get out there, and I'm going to jump into a deep dive after this and take a look at a quick project. And it's really interesting to see what this does and how it works through the watershed. But we're in there. We're putting out the biodiversity with our plants. We're also putting a Band-Aid on this. So we're giving it an opportunity for Mother Nature to heal itself and bring the natural biodiversity is there. Nothing is stronger than the natural biodiversity, and seeing that return to these sites. We have measurable outcomes. We're talking about the carbon sequestration. We keep coming to that. Like, we're doing it because carbon sequestration is something that needs to be done. We're not monetizing that at all. We're doing it because it's ecologically correct to do that. But we do have the people that are following us around and working with landowners and making it an opportunity where a landowner can make some money off of that. But we just want to see it because it needs to be done. We work out, we talk to, the communities, we go, there's economic benefits, we're providing good paying jobs while these projects they are short-lived. When you aggregate them together, we give a planting crew, we give a field preparations crew, we give them good paying jobs for a summer's worth of work, because we do most of our prep work from about June until about October or November. So, if we have those projects out there, we're providing good paying jobs for them to begin. We always keep we don't like to travel contractors from different states and all that. We hire local. We put the people to work. And a lot of times, the people that are running the machines, the bulldozers and stuff like that, they're probably somebody that worked in the mines, and maybe they're a displaced worker as the coal industry starts to regress a little bit, and there's not as many people working in that industry. We're providing them, living wage paying jobs and stuff like that. So, to talk about it, with our, key scale, what we're doing for our scaling up. Like I said, we're using like a lot of advanced technologies. We're looking at GIS mapping and drones to kind of look at these properties. We're using satellite imagery. We're using commercially available stuff like Google imagery and stuff. We're looking at developing project management systems, how to handle these large scale operations. One of the things that we do, like, we're responsible with our staff of 6 people. We actually do a lot of the grant writing ourselves. We're looking at thinking, hey, we probably need a dedicated grant writer to go out there and work on this stuff, rather than have us writing the grant, then implementing the grant, and then working the project and ordering the trees and hiring the contractors. It'd be one thing that we could take out, is having that grant writer. So that's what I'm going to talk about, trying to be efficient and how, if this scales up. We want to form other alliances. I'm going to have a slide here in a couple that kind of shows the partners that we have worked with over the years. And there's people, I ran out of space on the slide putting like logos and stuff on there, but we like to build these alliances. We're working on an early on here with Pennsylvania Environmental Council. We're looking at putting an alliance together of universities that are interested in, offsetting their carbon footprints through reforestation and stuff. That's in the real early stages, and hopefully that's something that's going to jump out there. But these alliances and the things that we can do are going to support this scaling up. And we don't go about this alone. We go into every project with 3, 5, 10 partners that are working with us on that. And we're also looking for policy support. So, if there's projects out there that increase it, carbon sequestration is one of the things that's kind of driving people are interested in trees, because they're seeing the carbon sequestration now. But there's other things out there that, that could be, that we could support get this reforestation done, and working with different policies, whether it's giving some kind of a tax credit or giving some kind of an incentive for people to, rather than that, to be the owners of this mine land that's sitting there in fallow as a scrub shrub land. Let's do something in it that's put it into a productive land use that's good for the environment, and that it does all these ecological services that we've been talking about through this. So we like to, we work with, all the different agencies here in Pennsylvania. We work with DEP, we work with OSM. Our MOU is actually with OSM, because with OSM being listed as a regulatory agency, the only way you get to give them money is if you get fined. So there's people out there that want to, like the R.K. Mellon Foundation. They like this project. They wanted to give money to it, but they couldn't give it to it because it was improprietary to give money to a regulatory agency. So that's where GFW kind of steps in, and we have an MOU that we will enhance their program. We will run their program. We will advocate their program. But we're a 501c3 and non-regulatory, then we can accept those donations on that behalf, and then go out there and implement OSM's program. So, we work with those. We want to streamline if there's any kind of permits and stuff like that. We want to work with that kind of stuff. Like I said before, we promote 100% native trees. I have a partner that comes to the table all the time with sawtooth oaks that they want to plant, and I adamantly refuse. They can go in and plant them after we're done, but I'm not planting sawtooth oaks because they're not native. They have a great value for food, but they're not native. So, and we'd like to, engage with different policymakers to bring this benefits, bring it to the table, let people understand it. And that's engagement like we're doing here today, and all the places that we go out and the students we engage with, the community organizations, that kind of stuff. So our future plans, we're looking at exploring new partnerships, like I said, developing these alliances, whether it's private or public landowners, working with them. We want to, figure out ways that, financing is always great. You saw that 2022, 2023, our numbers were way up because that was an influx of the IAJA money. That's kind of slowing down a little bit right now. We don't know, the federal environment. We all know that we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. Hopefully there's not going to be any drastic changes, but we don't know. We don't know. It's on everybody's mind. So we're looking at ways to do these larger projects, fund these larger projects, and be able to, continue to be successful with them. We look at critical watersheds. We look at species of concern. It was great. We had a tree program in Altoona in August, and on the field trip, we had a site that there was a den of rattlesnakes at the top of the site, but it had been a mine site, and those rattlesnakes were kind of like an allopatric population because they were stuck there. They couldn't get across. Hawks, eagles, owls were getting them as they were out on the site. Plus, it was a dark site, so I'm sure it was very hot for them to crawl across. We were out there. The trees have been there for almost 7 years now. They're starting to get canopy closure, and as we're walking through that, we encountered timber rattlesnakes traveling back and forth. Not only that, but we're also bringing back the animals, the small animals and small voles and moles and mice and stuff like that they use for their food. So it's there, and we just want to continue expanding. The whole idea of scaling up is to expand, and we want to see this get out there. So we're going to look at different things. We want to do we've used it a lot of time, ecological restoration. That's our key focus on everything that we're doing, is just to do this for the ecological region. Then we look at community benefits, and we also look at the carbon sequestration, the climate change, the climate effects that having these blocks of forest restored and that they can have in the environment. So here's a quick QR code. If you want to take it, it's fine. If you just use the greenforestwork.org address, all this information that's just going to take you to our website for the QR code. But I always tell everybody forgets to put the S on forest. They put it on works. And I always tell everybody the forests are many, the work is one. So that's the way I always try to remember it. So it's Green Forest Work. And actually, it's correct up there on the site. The forest is many. So here's another one that's going to take you to the same place, but this talks about the in-depth of our community involvement and our education that we've done, and some videos and some stuff that we've done. So I'm going to jump over now. How much time do I have yet, Annie?
You have 7 minutes until you're 5 minutes, so you have 12 minutes until we finish.
Okay, that'll be great because we can talk about this a little bit more in depth. So this is a project that took place in Eastern Kentucky. And this is actually, it's called the Robinson Forest. They called the actual project in the forest the Guy Cove Project. It's an experimental forest. The University of Kentucky purchased this in 1923. Okay, so as we're going through here, let's pay attention to dates and kind of like formulate a timeline in your head of how this stuff was happening. But the university bought it in 23. There was a mining company that came in that held the coal rights to it, and then through the 80s and the 90s, they surface mined it. And in Kentucky, this isn't allowed in Pennsylvania, but in Kentucky, mountaintop removal is an acceptable form of mining down there. And everybody knows with the mountaintop removal and its effects that it has done. So when they came through, they did this, okay? They created valley fills, and they had a lot of shrub areas that just remained afterwards. They had placed about 150,000 cubic yards into the stream, the valley fill portion of the operation, and they degraded the water that was there. They took around that stream habitat for all the animals and everything that were living there. And they, so it was kind of a, a really bad situation. So Green Forest Work got involved with it in 2009, and we put this whole project together. So we had a lot to mitigate. We had non-native species, we had heavy compaction, we had the valley fill operation, we had the buried stream, we had bad water, we had everything going with this. If you see, there's kind of some data down here at the bottom that, the result was about 1,450 meters, almost 1,500 meters of ephemeral and intermittent perennial streams were restored. A 0.1 hectare of vernal pools were created, and about 16.2 acres of hardwood forest. Okay, but that numbers, that people can process that. Wait till we start seeing the pictures. So this is where it takes place. You can see that it's a very mountainous region of the area down there in eastern Kentucky. And the big thing that you can see over here, there's three different water sources. The LMS is a stream that was not affected by mining. It's the what do I want to call it? The reference stream, and then a seep, and then the Guy Cove. Those were both in the areas of mining. And if you notice in here, look at the electrical, the pH doesn't really change much, but the electrical conductance tells you that, what constituents are in that water. And you can see the sulfates effects. It was just crazy amount there. The iron and manganese jumped up quite a bit on the Guy Cove project and stuff like that, but it was definitely mine impacted water, and it was impacting it not only chemically, but like I said, they filled the valley in and they buried that stream. So that stream habitat disappeared. Okay, this is what it looked like when Green Forest Work got involved in 2009. This is the mountaintop removal, where they went in and took the top of the mountain off. They basically brought everything down in here and filled the extra spoil in the valley. This is in 2009. It's kind of cut off on the bottom there, but this is in 2009. Remember I said that the mining on this was done in the mid 1990s? So this sat like this, shrub like this, for almost 20 years. Okay, 15 to 20 years. There's no trees growing on it. It's got the high compaction. The trees you do see growing on it, most of them are either shrub like autumn olives, honeysuckles, that kind of stuff, or they're extremely stunted because of the compaction. Okay, and remember I told you, we came in, the first thing we did is reestablish the streams. Well, here's some pictures of the construction going on. We went in there, we took that valley fill operation back out, we put the mountains back. We reestablished the stream. You can see the effects of it going on here. You can see them rebuilding the riparian zone. They were able to reestablish this habitat. This is in 2009. It was 2009, 2010 were construction years and planting years. Okay, we went back in 2014 or 2017 and took the first picture of it. Okay, this is almost the exact same view as what you're looking at right there. If you look at the mountain in the background. Okay. So we were able to get it to look like that in 2017. Dr. Barton just provided me an updated picture for 2025 or 2024 of what that now looks like. So when you were talking about restoration, forest restoration, watershed restoration, and you can see it. The pictures tell the story here, not just the numbers, but the pictures. But the other thing that you can look at here is you can see 2010 is when construction was ended. Okay, and you can see the Guy Cove. You still have the LMS, which is the reference stream. There was 3 sample points in the Guy Cove, and WB was, that was the valley fill. Okay, and you can see what has been happening. If you look at the water quality, this is only 3 years worth of data to it, but we went from water quality of around 2,000 in the electrical conductance. We're getting it down into the 1500s. They've continued to go down like this. You can see the pH has moderately come up a little bit. The sulfates have dropped drastically. So this is enhancing the water quality. The removal of the valley fill operation plus getting it reforested as the trees come on. I'm trying to find some more updated as you see the watershed is returning to its forested condition. I would like to see some updated water on this. This is pulled directly from the published work that was done from this, and I only have up to 2013 on it. But you can see the pattern has started, and it's not only is it restoring the forest, but it's restoring that water conditions too. So, like I said, this is a slide. It just kind of shows. I ran out of room here. I didn't have room. I didn't have room for the Foundation for Pennsylvania Watersheds. There's several different organizations out there that we've tried to, and we work with all of these. Some of them are direct funders. Some of them are providing technical assistance to it. Some of us are providing volunteer labor assistance. They come out to us. CASRI, Central Appalachian Red Spruce Initiative, Restoration Initiative. They give us trees every year to establish the red spruce throughout it. We got the NIFWIF, which with the grants through. PECA is on here. One Tree Planted, they give us a lot. We have landowners like the Altoona Water Authority that have, opened up their land to doing this. And it's just, like I said, we don't do these projects alone. We do these projects with 3, 4, 5, 10 people at a time. So, but just to kind of wrap up here, just talk, what we're looking at, GFW is committed to just kind of leading the way to get through these innovative, to do these innovative practices, get this forest reestablished, okay? We want to create healthier ecosystems, stronger communities, and we want to build a more sustainable future. We want to help Mother Nature and these temperate forests of Appalachia do their job and moderate this climate change that's been going on, okay? And we want to support, and just, get out there and just achieve this vision for Appalachia, that we can be back to a forested condition. Yeah, there's a lot more towns than there was in 1492 when America was discovered, and there's roadways and stuff like that. Those type of things we're not going to offset. But why do we have to have these large expanses of non-forested areas that we could be out there working on? We could be helping the environment, we could be helping climate change, and we could be just helping the ecosystem in general. So other than that, that's all I have. I can take a few questions here. Would you say we have about 5 minutes for questions? It depends on the funds. There is some funders that they do want a conservation easement on it. Some of the, whenever they start, when somebody's looking at it for like carbon sequestration, they usually want like a 50-year easement on it. Some of them, but not all of our funders require that. It's something that we do and we advocate. We have a project near Punxsutawney where it's a large landowner. She is pushing 85, 90 years old, has a special needs son, knows that there's not much for her property to be managed going down the road. Once we reforest it, she's in negotiations right now with Western Pennsylvania Conservancy to put that easement on her property. She's doing that on her own, but we facilitate them doing that with the idea that it's going to become either state forest or, it actually would fit real good into the adjacent game lands and stuff like that that are there. But, if the fund, sometimes there is a funder that requires a conservation easement. So, we do work with them. We don't do them personally, but we hook them up with like Western Pennsylvania Conservancy or some other place that can hold the conservation easement for them.
Any other questions for her? Yes.
I've heard the concern about the nation's regional supply of tropicals put out. Is that something that you see as an issue for your work? Do you find enough seedlings available to plant?
Currently, yes. If we start ramping this up, there's going to be some issues. And it does wax and wane for years because we'll have nurseries locally will have a good season for a certain species. Like last year, we had like a colony collapse of black cherry and we couldn't find a black cherry seedling. We had to bring them in from a nursery in eastern Michigan to bring them in. Occasionally we have that kind of stuff. Overall, we're kind of meeting our demands. We're not, we do a little bit of trading like with Maryland State Nursery. We work with mostly the commercial nurseries in Pennsylvania. We do work with a little bit of Ohio and stuff like that, the neighboring states that have the nurseries. And, but we try to keep everything as local as we can. But as this ramps up and there's more and more people involved with it, because there's we're just one entity that's doing this. There's 3, 4 other entities just in Pennsylvania that are starting to get into this. Some of it's because of the carbon sequestration parts, and they're starting to take up the seedlings. So, as the more acres get planted, we're going to need, and as part of the scaling grant is to look at what we need to do, what can we do to get these nurseries so we know. The biggest thing with nurseries is you have to have a 2 or 3 year lead time on stuff, because you just can't plant a tree. You plant an acorn one year and plant the tree the next year. It's you need you need like 2 years, maybe even 3 years to have the development. So you have to have the foresight on it.
I was just in Indiana, state forest lands there, and I was asking them about how they established some of their forests. And they were saying about the 3 year weed control. Is that part of your plan too, for reforestation? In order for the growth to occur, they need at least good 3 year weed management after planting. I'm not sure if that's part of your program.
It's not directly. We do it's on a case-by-case scenario. Typically what we're doing on these sites is we're going in with the deep ripping and we're ripping them up, and then we're replacing it with warm season grasses and pollinator seed mixes, and then planting the trees. And that usually will give us that time frame at least of 2 years before the grasses and stuff the weed management starts to come back. Some of the projects that we're working on in different places, depending on where it's at, and like I said, it's case by case. Sometimes we go in and burn everything off with we love prescribed fire, and it seems to be taking off more and more lately. But a lot of times, places will burn something off with a herbicide mix ahead of time to get those heavy non-natives under control. But a lot of times just the actual disturbance that we do to get this site ready for the trees gives us at least 2 years of stunted growth, and then we can get it. So but if we go out and we see that we're having a problem with the trees mortality and stuff like that, a lot of times it's easier the trees are cheap. Believe it or not, trees are very, very cheap, especially when you're dealing with bare root seedlings like we're doing. Sometimes it's easier to let the natural whatever's going to happen and just replant, and you start to see a bunch of different stuff on that. So, but like I said, it's case by case depending on what goes on.
Any other questions? If not, I have a question for you.
Okay.
In spite of OSM's interest in the reforestation of reclaimed sites, is it difficult for you to get state reclamation agencies to work with you and or approve projects like that, as opposed to just planting grass?
I wouldn't say that it's difficult. I would say that what it is it's a creature of habit scenario where when SMACRA was signed in 1977, a lot of emphasis was put on the grass, and the coal companies like to go out there and they like to plant this grass, and they actually think that it's cheaper to do this grass.
They thought it was quick and easy.
Quick and easy. It turns green really fast. And with the mining program, they have a 5-year from the last planting. They have a 5-year bond period where they get their bond money back if everything's good. So trees take a little longer to establish. You need a couple more years on those, to make sure they're successful. They're a little harder to establish sometimes if it's done incorrectly. If it's done correctly, they'll actually establish faster than the grasses they can do.
Now, OSM's forestry reclamation approach, I remember going to sites where it was all lumpy. It wasn't flat, approximate contour. It was just really lumpy and bumpy. Is that what you guys are looking for when you plant? It's
one of the methods. There's three different types. The thing that we advocate for is like when we're doing AML production reclamation, handle the soils directly in the first place where you don't drive over them. You can run over them as you're building them up, but that last 4 or 5 feet, handle them in a way that you don't have lessen your passes across it. Don't track it in with a dozer. Don't do anything to increase the compaction in that growing medium. That's the cheapest way to do it. A lot of these sites are legacy sites where they've been reclaimed for many, many years and they've been sitting out there, and the compaction's there. You're not going to go in and fluff that dirt up very well. And that's where we use a ripping technique with a machine with like a 4-foot ripper, either a dozer or a tractor. And we go in and rip it and we fluff it up. And then the other one is sometimes when they're moving the dirt, depending on what the landowner wants, what they want to do, that's what they refer to as the hummocky pile method. And it is very successful. It's been done. On that tour that I talked about in August, we did 2 sites with it, and the people were just amazed at how the trees were growing, because it's very successful. But it's still the same thing as you've got 4 or 5 feet of loose material that those trees can get their roots started, and they can do their thing.
I went hummocky, everything. And they were working with the American Chestnut
Mhm.
Foundation. 15/17 or whatever.
15/16, yeah.
15/16. In other words,
Yep.
15 parts of one, the Chinese chestnut, and then 16 of the American. It's
Yeah.
percentages of the cross. Do you still work with them on that, trying to
Yeah.
reforest?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. In fact, I just got an order in yesterday for 4,000 American chestnut trees for next year's for planting. So, yeah, we're still working with them. And actually, we have sites now just outside of Phillipsburg, the Coaldale area, if anybody's familiar with that mine drainage area. We have trees that are 9 years old, American chestnut trees that are 9 years old that this year produced their first round of nuts. They've had flowers on them the last couple of years, but they haven't established. This year, we actually got nuts off of them, and the American chestnut was able to harvest them and put them into their seed
Silly
mix.
question for you: do you plant pawpaw trees?
Oh yeah,
Good.
they don't do well because they're shade tolerant. They
Yeah,
like
yeah.
shade, but we do
Our
put them out there.
pawpaws just came in at the end of September, and it's the most wonderful fruit in this whole world.
Yes,
That's why I always push that if people are
yes,
interested.
yes.
All right. Any other questions for Eric? All right. Thank you so much, Eric.
Thank you.